Streetwise, alien girls pull a dangerous prank on a human. They never expected what happened next. Jason Mercer wiped sweat from his brow as he trudged through the dusty streets of Rixa's most notorious district. The locals called it the Hollow, a maze of crumbling structures and shadowy alleys that even the planet's native inhabitants avoided. The twin red suns beat down mercilessly, casting everything in a bloody hue that matched the reputation of this forsaken place. Perfect spot for some R&R, he muttered to himself with a wry smile, adjusting the pack on his broad shoulders. At 32, Jason had seen his fair share of exotic worlds, but Rixa was something else entirely. Known for its harsh environment and even harsher inhabitants, it was the kind of place that separated the adventurers from the tourists. And Jason Mercer was no tourist. His muscular frame moved with practiced ease through the narrow passages, sandy-colored hair catching the crimson light as he navigated the unfamiliar terrain. Gray eyes, sharp as steel, scanned his surroundings with the alertness of a predator. Years of traversing dangerous territories had taught him to stay vigilant, especially in places where humans were a rarity. The abandoned buildings loomed around him like silent sentinels, their alien architecture a testament to civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity had reached for the stars. Jason paused to examine a peculiar structure, its walls etched with symbols he couldn't decipher. That's when he felt it, a small but surprisingly strong grip on his arm. Jason spun around, instinctively reaching for the blade concealed at his hip, only to freeze at the sight before him. A small humanoid girl, no more than 6 by human standards, stared up at him with enormous silvery eyes. Her skin was a delicate pale green, her tangled snow-white hair matted with dirt. The tattered remnants of what might have once been a dress hung from her thin frame. "Well, hello there," Jason said, relaxing his stance. "You lost, little one?" The alien child didn't respond, but her mouth curved into a timid smile that stirred something protective in Jason's chest. Despite the dirt and grime, there was something undeniably charming about her. Before he could say anything else, movement caught his eye. From a nearby pile of debris emerged 4 more children, all girls, all nearly identical to the first, with the same green skin, pointed ears, and silvery eyes. They approached cautiously, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "Your sisters?" Jason asked, crouching down to their level. "What are you all doing out here by yourselves? This isn't exactly a playground." The first girl's smile widened, revealing tiny pointed teeth. Then with a speed that defied her small stature, she lunged at him. The others followed suit, their movements a blur of green and white. "What the?" was all Jason managed before they were upon him. Despite their size, their strength was astonishing. 2 latched onto his legs while another leapt onto his back. The 4th grabbed his right arm, and the first, the one who'd initially approached him, seized his left. Working with surprising coordination, they managed to knock him off balance. Jason hit the ground hard, the air rushing from his lungs. Before he could recover, the little terrors had him completely immobilized, using what appeared to be strips of some alien material to bind his wrists and ankles. "Okay, very funny," he growled, testing his restraints. They held firm. "Now untie me before I get really annoyed." The 5 girls gathered in front of him, chattering in a language his universal translator couldn't decipher. They seemed to be debating something, occasionally pointing at him and giggling. Then with childlike curiosity, they began examining him, poking his muscles, tugging at his clothes, even scratching at the stubble on his jaw. For the first time in years, Jason felt a flicker of genuine fear. Not because he believed these children would harm him, though their strength was concerning, but because of his vulnerability. If any of Rix's more dangerous inhabitants stumbled upon this scene, he'd be defenseless. The smallest of the 5, distinguishable only by a scar above her left eye, approached him cautiously. She reached out and pinched his bicep, then jumped back with a delighted squeal when he flexed instinctively. "Listen," Jason said, forcing his voice to remain calm. "I don't know what game you're playing, but this isn't safe for any of us." The girls continued their examination, seemingly fascinated by his human physiology. One tugged at his hair while another poked at the leather of his boots. As minutes passed, Jason's initial alarm gave way to a different emotion. These weren't malicious creatures, they were children. Street children by the look of them, surviving in one of the harshest environments he'd encountered. And despite their current mischief, There was something undeniably endearing about their curiosity. An idea formed in his mind. A crazy, possibly stupid idea, but one that felt right nonetheless. "Hey," he said softly, catching their attention, "I have a proposition for you. If you untie me, I'll take you away from this place. Somewhere safe. I'll be your father." The words surprised even him as they left his mouth. But as the 5 little faces turned toward him, their silvery eyes widening in disbelief, he knew he meant it. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then with tears welling in their eyes, all 5 girls threw themselves at him, their small arms encircling his neck as they shouted in unison, "Daddy! Daddy!" Jason couldn't help but laugh, even as he remained bound on the dusty ground. "I'll take that as a yes. Now how about untying your new dad?" The smallest of the girls, the one with the scar above her left eye, was the first to move. With nimble fingers, she began working at the knots, binding Jason's wrists. The others soon followed suit, their tiny hands making quick work of his restraints. "Thank you," Jason said, rubbing his wrists as the last of the bindings fell away. "Now, what are your names?" The girls exchanged glances, then the smallest one pointed to herself and said something in their melodic language. Her voice was high and clear, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I can't understand you," Jason admitted. He tapped the universal translator at his collar. "This thing usually works, but your language must be pretty unique." The girl with the scar frowned. Then her face brightened. She pointed to herself again. "Miri," she said carefully, as if testing the sound. Then she pointed to each of her sisters in turn. "Lena, Tavi, Suri, Kira." "Miri, Lena, Tavi, Suri, and Kira," Jason repeated, committing the names to memory. "I'm Jason." "Jason," they echoed in unison, their pronunciation slightly off but close enough. He smiled, rising to his feet and dusting himself off. "All right, girls. First things first, we need to get out of this district. It's not safe for any of us." As if on cue, a distant shout echoed through the abandoned streets. The girls froze, their silver eyes widening with unmistakable fear. Mary grabbed Jason's hand and tugged urgently, pointing in the opposite direction of the noise. "Trouble?" Jason asked, though the answer was obvious from their reactions. Mary nodded vigorously, her white hair bouncing. She made a series of gestures, mimicking digging, then pointing to her sisters and herself, and finally making a slashing motion across her throat. "Someone wants you to work, and they'll hurt you if they find you?" Jason guessed, piecing together the charade. All 5 nodded, their expressions solemn. "Mines," Lena managed to say, the word clearly difficult for her. She pointed downward. "Bad men. Take children." Jason's jaw tightened. Child labor in illegal mining operations was unfortunately common on frontier worlds like Rixa, where regulations were lax and enforcement even laxer. The fact that these girls had escaped such a fate spoke volumes about their resilience and intelligence. "No one's taking you anywhere," he promised, his voice hardening. "Not while I'm around." The shouts grew closer, accompanied now by the sound of heavy footsteps. Jason quickly assessed their options. His ship was docked on the outskirts of the main settlement, a good 2 miles from their current position. Making it there without being spotted would be challenging, especially with 5 children in tow. "We need somewhere to hide until dark," he muttered, scanning the dilapidated buildings around them. Tovi, the tallest of the 5, tugged at his shirt and pointed to a structure across the street. Unlike the others, this building appeared to have partially collapsed, creating a pile of rubble that concealed what might be an entrance. "Good eye," Jason said, ruffling her hair. "Let's go." They moved quickly across the open street, Jason keeping the girls close. The entrance Tavi had spotted was indeed there, a narrow opening barely visible behind a fallen column. One by one, they squeezed through, finding themselves in a surprisingly intact room. The ceiling had partially caved in, allowing shafts of crimson sunlight to penetrate the gloom, but the walls were solid and there appeared to be only one way in or out. "Perfect," Jason whispered. "Now we wait." The girls settled around him in a tight circle, their small bodies pressed against his as if seeking protection. Despite the danger, Jason couldn't help but feel a surge of affection for these strange alien children who had so abruptly entered his life. As they waited, the sounds of their pursuers grew closer, then gradually faded as the search moved in another direction. Hours passed and the crimson light filtering through the ceiling slowly dimmed as Rixa's twin suns began to set. During this time, Jason attempted to learn more about his new companions through a combination of simple words, gestures, and drawings made in the dust. He gathered that they were orphans, their parents having died in the mines. They had escaped several months ago and had been surviving on the streets ever since, avoiding recapture by staying in the abandoned district, where even the gang members rarely ventured. "You've been very brave," Jason told them, his admiration genuine, "but you don't have to do this alone anymore." As darkness fell, Jason checked the street through a crack in the wall. All seemed quiet. "Time to move," he said, rising to his feet. "Stay close and stay quiet." One by one, they slipped back through the narrow entrance. The night air was cool against Jason's skin, a welcome relief after the stuffy confines of their hiding place. Rixa's 3 moons cast an eerie blue glow over the abandoned district, providing just enough light to navigate by. "My ship's this way," Jason whispered, pointing. "If we're lucky, we can—" A harsh voice cut through the night. Well, what do we have here?" Jason instinctively pushed the girls behind him, squaring his shoulders as he faced the source of the voice. In the blue moonlight stood a tall figure, silhouetted against the ruins. "Easy there, human," the figure said, stepping forward into a patch of moonlight. "I'm not with them." It was a female humanoid, taller than most Rixan natives Jason had encountered. Her skin was a deeper green than the girls', almost emerald in the moonlight, and her white hair was cropped short against her scalp. She wore what appeared to be a modified security uniform, the official insignias torn off, but the utility belt still intact. "Security?" Jason asked warily, not relaxing his protective stance. "Former security," she corrected, holstering her weapon in a deliberate show of non-aggression. "Name's Nira. I work alone now." Miri peeked around Jason's leg, her silver eyes widening in recognition. She tugged at Jason's shirt, nodding enthusiastically. "Friend?" Jason asked the child, who nodded again. "I've helped these little ones avoid capture a few times," Nira explained, "but we've got bigger problems right now. Dex's crew is sweeping this sector, and they've got trackers." As if on cue, the distant sound of grav boots and rough voices echoed through the abandoned streets. "Your ship?" Nira asked. "Eastern Docking Bay," Jason replied, "but it might as well be on the other side of the planet with those patrols between us and it." Nira's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I know a way, underground tunnels, but we need a cover to get there." She assessed Jason with a critical eye. "You any good at bluffing, human?" "I've talked my way out of tighter spots than this," Jason replied with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. 5 children complicated matters significantly. "Good, because you're about to become an official transporter of specialized mining labor." Nira reached into her belt pouch and pulled out what appeared to be an official-looking datapad. "These are forged, but they'll pass a basic scan. You're Foreman Brock from the Outer Rim, authorized to transport these specific workers to Mining Outpost 7. Jason took the datapad, scanning the falsified credentials. "And you? Your local guide, of course." Nira winked, the gesture surprisingly human. "Hired to ensure your valuable cargo reaches its destination safely." The approaching voices grew louder. There was no time to debate the plan. "Girl," Jason said, crouching down to their level, "we need to pretend. Bad men are coming. You have to act scared of me, understand? Just pretend. I would never hurt you." The 5 exchanged glances, then nodded solemnly. Miri made a show of cowering, and her sisters quickly followed suit, their performances convincingly fearful. "Smart kids," Nira murmured. "Now follow my lead." She stepped out into the main street just as a patrol rounded the corner. 4 burly Rixans armed with stun batons and restraints. Their leader, a particularly nasty-looking specimen, with a scar running down his face, raised his weapon at the sight of them. "Halt!" he barked. "Identification!" Nira stepped forward, her posture deferential but not submissive. "Evening, officers. Just escorting this off-worlder and his cargo to the Eastern District." The patrol leader's eyes narrowed as they fell on Jason and the cowering children. "Human," he spat the word like a curse. "What business do you have with these younglings?" Jason straightened to his full height, adopting the arrogant demeanor of someone used to authority. "I'm Foreman Brock," he said coldly, holding out the datapad. These are specialized workers bound for Outpost 7. My paperwork is in order. The patrol leader snatched the data pad, his eyes scanning the document suspiciously. These are children. Small fingers, Jason replied dismissively. Better for extracting the fine mineral deposits. Surely you understand the economics of it. The patrol leader grunted, clearly understanding all too well. Child labor was the backbone of Rixa's mining economy. He handed the datapad back. And her? He asked, jerking his chin toward Nira. Local guide, Jason said before Nira could respond. Expensive, but worth every credit. She knows how to avoid complications. The patrol leader's gaze lingered on Nira, something unspoken passing between them that made Jason's skin crawl. Finally, he stepped aside. Proceed, he said, but stay on the main routes. The back alleys aren't safe, even for humans. Appreciated, Jason replied, gesturing for the girls to follow as he and Nira continued down the street. They maintained the charade for 3 more blocks, passing 2 additional patrols with the same story. The girls played their parts perfectly, keeping their eyes downcast and flinching whenever Jason glanced their way. Finally, Nira led them down a narrow side street and stopped before what appeared to be a solid wall. She pressed her palm against a specific brick, and a section of the wall slid silently aside, revealing a dark passage. Quickly, she urged, ushering them inside. The wall closed behind them, plunging them into darkness until Nira activated a small light. You can drop the act now, girls, Jason said softly. You were amazing. The 5 immediately abandoned their fearful poses, clustering around Jason with relieved smiles. That was too close, Nira muttered, leading them deeper into the tunnel. Dex must have put out a general alert. Those weren't just regular patrols. They were hunting. Dex? Jason asked, keeping his voice low as they navigated the narrow passage. Vexnar Drath runs the biggest mining operation on Rixa. These little ones were his property until they escaped. Nira's expression hardened. He doesn't like losing assets. They're children, not assets, Jason growled. Nira gave him an appraising look. You really are different, aren't you? Most off-worlders who come to Rixa either participate in the system or ignore it. Very few try to change it. I'm not trying to change anything, Jason replied. I'm just trying to save 5 kids who deserve better. Nira's lips quirked into a half-smile. Maybe that's change enough. The tunnels beneath Rixa's surface were a labyrinth of narrow passages, their walls slick with moisture and glowing with bioluminescent fungi. Jason kept the girls close as they followed Nira deeper into the network, his instincts growing increasingly uneasy. Something wasn't adding up. The forged documents had been too perfect, too readily available, and Nira's familiarity with the patrol leader suggested connections she hadn't disclosed. How much further? Jason asked, breaking the tense silence. Not far, Nira replied without turning. There's a junction ahead that leads directly to the spaceport district. Miri tugged at Jason's hand, her silver eyes wide with concern. She pointed at Nira, then made a gesture with her fingers that mimicked talking on a communicator. Jason's muscles tensed. Did you call someone? He asked Nira casually. The former security officer paused, her back still to them. Just checking the route ahead. Standard procedure. Funny, I didn't see you use a comma. Nira turned slowly, her expression unreadable in the dim light. You're observant for an off-worlder. And you're evasive for someone claiming to help us. Jason subtly shifted his stance, ready to move if necessary. The tension between them crackled like static electricity. For a moment, neither spoke, sizing each other up in the eerie glow of the fungal light. Then Nira sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. Look, it's complicated. I do help these kids, but I also have to survive on this rock. Meaning? Meaning there's a bounty on these 5 that could set me up for life. Her gaze flicked to the children, then back to Jason. But I haven't decided to collect it. Yet. Jason's hand moved to the concealed blade at his hip. I won't let you take them back. To his surprise, Nira laughed, a genuine sound that echoed off the tunnel walls. You know, most species would have already made a deal to save their own skin. Humans are different. We're stubborn that way, Jason replied, not relaxing his guard. Nira took a step closer, studying him with newfound interest. I've met humans before, but none like you. Most come to Rixa for profit or pleasure, not to adopt street urchins and challenge the system. Despite the tension, Jason felt an unexpected pull toward her, a magnetic attraction that transcended species. There was something compelling about her directness, her complex morality. "So what happens now?" he asked, acutely aware of the 5 pairs of eyes watching their exchange. Before Nira could answer, the distant sound of boots echoed through the tunnel behind them. Her eyes widened. "That's not possible. Nobody knows about this entrance except whoever you contacted," Jason finished grimly. Guilt flashed across her features. "I sent a standard check-in. It's required, or they'd come looking anyway. But they shouldn't have found us this quickly unless you're being tracked," Jason concluded. He turned to the girls. "Did any of you take anything from the patrols? Anything at all?" The 4 older girls shook their heads, but little Mary looked down guiltily. From her pocket, she withdrew a small metallic disc, like a security badge she must have pickpocketed during their encounter. "Clever girl," Nira murmured, taking the badge. "But these have trackers." She crushed it under her boot, but the damage was done. "We need to move. Now." The approaching footsteps grew louder. "This way," Nira urged, leading them down a side passage barely wide enough for Jason's shoulders. "There's another route, but it's longer." As they hurried through the narrowing tunnel, Jason kept the girls between himself and Nira, still not entirely trusting her intentions. The passage eventually opened into a small chamber with 3 exits. "The right one leads to the spaceport," Nira said, pointing, "but they'll expect that. The left leads deeper into the mining network, a dead end." "In the middle?" Jason asked. "Maintenance shaft. Comes out near your ship, but it's risky. Automated security." The footsteps behind them grew louder, accompanied by the crackle of communications equipment. "Middle it is," Jason decided. "Girls, stay close." As they entered the narrow maintenance shaft, the space forced them to proceed single file. Jason sent the girls ahead with Nira leading, while he took the rear position to guard against pursuit. The shaft was barely lit, forcing them to feel their way along the damp walls. After several minutes of tense silence, they reached a vertical section with metal rungs embedded in the wall. "Up," Nira whispered. "I'll help the little ones." One by one, she lifted the girls onto the ladder. Jason watched, struck by the gentleness with which she handled them despite her earlier admission about the bounty. When it was his turn to climb, their eyes met in the dim light. "Why help us at all if you were considering turning us in?" he asked quietly. Nira's expression softened. "Because sometimes you meet someone who makes you question everything you thought you knew." The intensity of her gaze sent a jolt of electricity down Jason's spine. Without thinking, he reached out and brushed a strand of white hair from her face. Her skin was warm beneath his fingers, surprisingly soft. "We should go," she whispered, but made no move to pull away. For a heartbeat, the danger behind them faded into insignificance. There was only this moment, this connection that defied explanation. Jason leaned forward slightly, drawn by an instinct older than civilization. The spell was broken by Miri's urgent whisper from above. Jason pulled back, reality crashing back in. "Later," Nira promised, her eyes holding a heat that had nothing to do with danger. They climbed in silence, the only sounds their breathing and the distant pursuit below. At the top, they emerged into what appeared to be a maintenance closet within the spaceport complex. "Your ship?" Nira asked, all business once more. "Docking Bay 17, the Horizon Runner." Nira's expression darkened. "That's going to be a problem. The main bays are all being watched." "Then we create a diversion," Jason said, the beginnings of a plan forming in his mind. "Something big enough to draw their attention while we make a run for it." A slow smile spread across Nira's face. "I might know just the thing." "The fuel depot," Nira whispered, pulling Jason into the shadows as a patrol passed. "It's connected to every docking bay through automated delivery systems. Trigger the emergency protocols in Section E, and the entire port goes into lockdown, except for emergency personnel." "And how exactly do we trigger these protocols?" Jason asked, keeping his voice low. Nira's lips curved into a mischievous smile. "I might still have access codes from my security days. They're probably outdated, but they'll create enough confusion to trip the alarms." Jason studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, he nodded. What about the girls? We can't take them into a potential firefight. There's a maintenance closet near Bay 15. They can hide there while we create the diversion. It's only 2 bays from your ship. The plan was risky, but with Vexnar's men closing in, they had few options. Jason gathered the girls close, explaining in simple terms what they needed to do. Stay together, he emphasized, looking each child in the eye. When you hear the alarms, count to 100, then run straight to the ship. I'll meet you there. Miri, ever the leader, nodded solemnly. Promise come back? Jason placed his hand over his heart. Promise. With Nira's guidance, they navigated the service corridors of the spaceport, avoiding the main concourse where Vexnar's men would be watching. The maintenance closet was cramped but secure, with ventilation and emergency lighting. Be brave, Jason told the girls as he closed the door, his chest tight with worry. Alone with Nira in the corridor, tension of a different sort filled the air between them. The mission ahead was dangerous, possibly fatal, and the awareness of mortality heightened every sensation. If this goes wrong, Nira began. Jason silenced her with a finger to her lips. It won't. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the universe narrowed to just the two of them. Jason's hand moved from her lips to her cheek, his thumb tracing the curve of her jawline. Nira leaned into his touch, her emerald skin warm against his palm. I've never met anyone like you, she whispered. Humans are fascinating. Is that so? Jason murmured, drawing closer until he could feel her breath on his face. Your species is so young compared to most in the galaxy, yet you face everything with such intensity. Their lips met in a kiss that started tentative but quickly blazed into something more urgent. Different species, different worlds. Yet the language of desire needed no translation. Her body pressed against his, fitting perfectly despite their alien origins. We should... Nira pulled back slightly, breathless. Focus on the mission, Jason finished, equally affected. Later? Later, she agreed, her eyes promising much more. They moved swiftly through the maintenance corridors to the fuel depot, control junction, a small unassuming panel hidden behind a service hatch. Nira's fingers flew over the keypad, entering a complex sequence. Moment of truth, she muttered as she input the final digit. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then a series of lights on the panel began flashing red. It worked, Nira exclaimed. We've got about 30 seconds before... Alarms blared throughout the facility, drowning out her words. Emergency lighting activated, bathing the corridor in pulsing crimson. Time to move, Jason shouted over the noise. Back to the girls. They raced through the corridors, now filled with confused port workers and security personnel rushing toward the fuel depot. The chaos was perfect cover until a familiar voice cut through the din. There, the human and the traitor. 3 of Vexnar's men had spotted them breaking away from the main security response to give chase. Split up, Nira called. I'll draw them off. Get the girls. Before Jason could protest, she darted down a side passage. 2 of the pursuers immediately following. The third hesitated, then continued after Jason. Heart pounding, Jason pushed himself harder, using his superior human strength and endurance to outpace his pursuer. He rounded a corner, flattened himself against the wall, and waited. When the Rixen guard rushed past, Jason struck, delivering a precise blow to the back of the neck that sent the alien crumpling to the floor. By the time he reached the maintenance closet, the girls were already counting aloud in their musical language, nearing 100. Relief flooded through him at finding them safe. Change of plan, he told them, gathering Mary in his arms while the others clustered around him. We go together. Now. They moved as a unit through the emergency-lit corridors, Jason constantly scanning for threats. Bay 17 was just ahead, its access door partially open in the lockdown protocol. There it is, Jason said, pointing to the sleek outline of the Horizon Runner. Almost home. That's when he realized they were one short. Where's Kira? He asked, panic rising in his throat as he counted only 4 small green faces. Tavi pointed back the way they had come, her silver eyes wide with fear. Scared, hide! Jason's heart sank. In the confusion, Kira must have panicked and hidden somewhere along their route. He couldn't leave her behind. Get to the ship, he instructed the others, punching in the access code to lower the boarding ramp. Stay inside and lock the door. I'll find Kira. Retracing their steps was agonizing, each second increasing the risk of capture. Jason called Kira's name softly, checking every possible hiding place. Finally, he heard a faint whimper from inside a ventilation duct. Kira, it's me, Jason. Your dad? A small face appeared in the darkness, tear-streaked and frightened. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home. As Kira crawled into his arms, a shadow fell across them. Jason turned to find himself facing four of Vexnar's guards, weapons drawn. The human who steals children, one of them sneered. Vexnar wants to meet you. Jason set Kira down gently. Run to the ship, he whispered. Now. As the child darted away, Jason straightened to his full height, facing his captors with the quiet confidence that had seen him through countless dangerous situations. Gentlemen, he said with a dangerous smile, I'm afraid I'll have to decline that invitation. What happened next would later become legend in the spaceport bars of Rixa. How a single human fought like a demon from the old stories, moving with impossible speed and strength against four armed guards. Two went down before they could even fire their weapons. The third managed a glancing shot that scorched Jason's shoulder before a precisely aimed kick sent him crashing into a wall. The fourth guard, seeing his companions dispatched so easily, turned to flee, only to run headlong into Nira, who dropped him with a stun baton to the chest. I thought you could use some help, she said, breathing hard from her own fight. Jason grinned through the pain in his shoulder. Perfect timing. Their eyes met, and despite the danger, that same electric connection surged between them. This time, it was Nira who moved first, pulling Jason into a fierce kiss that spoke volumes about fear and relief, and something deeper neither was ready to name. The ship, Jason reminded her when they finally broke apart. Lead the way, she replied, her hand finding his as they ran. The Horizon runner loomed ahead, its sleek hull gleaming under the emergency lights. Jason and Nira sprinted across the docking bay, an adrenaline masking the pain of Jason's scorched shoulder. The boarding ramp was down, a good sign that the girls had made it safely aboard. Almost there, Jason panted, his hand still clasped tightly in Nira's. They were halfway across the bay when floodlights suddenly blazed to life, bathing the area in harsh white light. Jason skidded to a halt, instinctively pushing Nira behind him as figures emerged from behind cargo containers. Impressive, human, came a deep, cultured voice. Most impressive. A tall Rixian male stepped forward, flanked by 6 elite guards in matching black uniforms. Unlike the common Rixians, whose skin tended toward various shades of green, this one's complexion was a deep indigo, a mark of high status. His white hair was elaborately styled, and his silver eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. Vexnar, Nira whispered, her body tensing. The mining boss smiled, revealing teeth filed to points, another status symbol among Rixian elites. The infamous Jason Mercer. Your reputation precedes you, though I must say, child abduction seems beneath a man of your talents. It's not abduction when you're rescuing them from slavery, Jason replied evenly, assessing their odds. 6 guards, all armed with energy weapons. Vexnar himself carried what appeared to be a ceremonial dagger, but Jason doubted he'd gotten to his position without knowing how to use it. Vexnar's smile didn't waver. Slavery, such an ugly human concept. On Rixa, we call it economic opportunity. Those children possess a genetic trait of immeasurable value, the ability to sense mineral deposits through solid rock. Do you have any idea what that's worth? Their lives are worth more, Jason said firmly. Noble sentiment, typically human. Vexner stepped closer, but ultimately futile. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and, he gestured to Jason's injured shoulder, already damaged. Surrender the children, and I'll allow you both to leave Rixa alive. A generous offer, I think. Jason felt Nira's hand squeeze his, a silent communication. Without looking back, he knew she was ready to fight. Here's my counteroffer, Jason said, subtly shifting his weight. You walk away now, and I don't demonstrate why humans have a reputation for being the most dangerous species in the sector when our families are threatened. Vexnar's smile finally faltered. Your arrogance is... A small projectile suddenly arced from the Horizon Runner's open hatch, landing with a metallic clang between Jason and Vexnar. All eyes turned to the unexpected object. "Grenade!" one of the guards shouted, diving for cover. It wasn't a grenade. It was a power coupling from the ship's engine room. But the distraction was perfect. In the moment of confusion, Jason and Nira moved in perfect synchronization. Jason lunged forward, tackling Vexnar to the ground while Nira spun to engage the nearest guards. The mining boss was stronger than he looked, his indigo fingers clawing at Jason's face as they grappled on the cold metal floor. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," Vexnar hissed. "Those children are the key to the richest mineral deposit ever discovered on Rixa." "They're children," Jason growled, pinning Vexnar's arms. "Not tools." Around them, chaos erupted. Nira had disabled 2 guards with her stun baton, but the others were regrouping, weapons raised. From the ship's ramp, more improvised projectiles rained down. Tools, spare parts, even what looked like food containers, thrown by 5 small pairs of hands. The girls were fighting back in their own way. Vexnar used Jason's momentary distraction to break free, drawing his ceremonial dagger in one fluid motion. The blade gleamed with an unnatural blue light, poisoned, almost certainly. "I build everything I have from nothing," Vexnar snarled, circling Jason. "I won't let some self-righteous human destroy it all." "You build it on the backs of children," Jason replied, dodging a vicious slash. "That makes it worth destroying." They exchanged blows. Jason's superior strength matched against Vexnar's speed and the threat of his poisoned blade. A thin line of blood appeared on Jason's forearm where the dagger had barely grazed him. Immediately, his arm began to burn, the sensation spreading rapidly. "Fast acting," Vexnar observed with satisfaction. "You have perhaps 5 minutes before paralysis sets in. Surrender now and I'll provide the antidote." No. Jason's vision blurred slightly, but he forced himself to focus. "I've had worse hangovers," he muttered, launching himself at Vexnar with renewed determination. Meanwhile, Nira had fought her way to the ship's ramp, creating a defensive position with the help of the girls and their improvised ammunition. "Jason," she called, "we need to go now." With a final surge of strength, Jason knocked the dagger from Vexnar's hand and delivered a powerful blow to his jaw, sending the mining boss sprawling. The poison was working faster than he'd let on. His legs were already growing numb. Staggering to the ship, Jason felt Nira's arms around him, half carrying him up the ramp. Behind them, the remaining guards were regrouping, helping Vexnar to his feet. "Get us out of here," Jason gasped as the boarding ramp closed behind them. Nira helped him to the pilot's seat, her face tight with worry. "The poison—" "Later," Jason insisted, forcing his increasingly unresponsive fingers to dance across the control panel. "Girls, strap in!" The engines roared to life just as the first energy blasts struck the hull. Warning lights flashed across the console. Shield damage, a fuel line rupture. Navigation systems compromised. "They're targeting our engines," Nira observed, sliding into the co-pilot's seat with surprising familiarity. "I can reroute power from non-essential systems, but we're going to limp out of here at best." Jason nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought the spreading paralysis. The ship lurched upward, breaking free of its docking clamps with a screech of protesting metal. More blasts rocked the ship as they cleared the spaceport. Through the viewport, Jason could see pursuit vessels already launching. "They're not giving up," he muttered. "Can we make a hyperspace jump?" Nira asked, her fingers flying over the auxiliary controls. "Not from within the atmosphere," Jason replied. "And with the navigation system damaged, we'd be jumping blind." The Horizon Runner shuddered as it climbed through Rixa's turbulent upper atmosphere, pursued by 3 sleek patrol vessels. Each impact of their weapons further damaged the already compromised systems. Jason's vision was tunneling now, the poison reaching his chest. He fought to remain conscious, knowing that their lives depended on his piloting skills for just a few minutes more. "There's a medical kit in the crew quarters," he told Nira through gritted teeth. "Might have a universal antidote." Nira hesitated, torn between helping Jason and keeping the ship airborne. Before she could decide, Miri appeared at her elbow, tugging insistently at her sleeve. "Help, Daddy," the child said, her silver eyes wide with determination. "We fly." To Jason's astonishment, all 5 girls positioned themselves around the cockpit, their small hands hovering over various controls. They couldn't possibly know how to fly the ship, and yet they're telepathic, Nira realized aloud. That's how they sense minerals, and how they're reading your piloting knowledge right now. With his last reserves of strength, Jason guided the ship clear of Rix's atmosphere into open space. The pursuing vessels were closing fast. "Hyperspace coordinates," he mumbled, his words slurring. "Need to—" "I've got you," Nira said, her cool hand against his burning cheek. "Stay with me, Jason." As consciousness slipped away, Jason was vaguely aware of Nira's lips pressing against his forehead, of small green hands taking control of his ship, of the stars outside the viewport stretching into lines as the Horizon Runner made a desperate jump to safety. His last thought, before darkness claimed him, was that he'd never expected a simple adventure on Rixa to give him something he'd never known he wanted. A family. Jason drifted through darkness, occasionally surfacing to fragments of consciousness. Cool hands on his burning skin. Small voices whispering in an unfamiliar language. The distant hum of engines struggling to maintain power. Time lost all meaning in this twilight state between life and death. When he finally opened his eyes fully, the first thing he saw was Nira's face, her emerald features etched with exhaustion and relief. "Welcome back," she murmured, her fingers gently brushing his cheek. "You had us worried." Jason tried to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. Nira helped him sip water from a metal cup, her touch lingering longer than necessary. "The girl?" he managed to ask. "See for yourself," Nira replied, nodding toward the foot of the narrow bunk. All 5 children were curled up at the end of his bed, fast asleep in a tangle of small green limbs and white hair. They looked peaceful, clean, and for the first time since he'd met them, properly fed. "They refused to leave your side," Nira explained softly. "I found the universal antidote in your medical supplies, but it wasn't enough to counteract Vexnar's poison completely. That's when something extraordinary happened." Jason raised an eyebrow questioningly. "The girls formed a circle around you and joined hands. They went into some kind of trance, their eyes glowing silver. I could feel something flowing between them and into you." Nira shook her head in wonder. "Your color improved almost immediately. The poison began to recede. They saved your life, Jason." He looked at the sleeping children with newfound amazement. "How long was I out?" 3 days. We're at Haven Colony. I remembered you mentioning a friend here. Stephen Clark. He's been helping us stay under the radar." Haven, a frontier settlement established by human pioneers, but now home to dozens of species seeking a fresh start away from the rigid hierarchies of more established worlds. It was as good a place as any to disappear. "Smart thinking," Jason said, attempting to sit up. His body felt weak but functional, remarkable considering the potency of Vexnar's poison. Nira helped him, her strong hands supporting his back. Their faces were suddenly very close, and the air between them charged with the same electricity they'd felt in the spaceport tunnels. "I thought I might lose you," she whispered, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Jason reached up to touch her face, tracing the delicate line of her jaw. "Takes more than some fancy blue poison to get rid of me." Her lips curved into a smile. "Humans, so stubborn." "Part of our charm," he replied, drawing her closer until their foreheads touched. What began as a gentle kiss quickly deepened into something more urgent. A celebration of survival, of possibilities, of the unexpected connection that had formed between them in the chaos of their escape. Her body fit against his as if designed for him, transcending the differences in their species. A small giggle interrupted them. 5 pairs of silver eyes were now wide open, watching with undisguised curiosity and amusement. "Later," Jason promised Nira in a whisper that made her emerald skin flush a deeper shade of green. "Daddy better," Miri exclaimed, launching herself at Jason with such enthusiasm that he winced despite his smile. The others quickly followed, creating a pile of joyful children on his chest. Their happiness was palpable, their relief genuine. Somehow, in the span of a few chaotic days, these 5 little aliens had become his daughters in every way that mattered. "Thanks to you," he told them, hugging each one. "Nira says you helped heal me." Tavi, the tallest, nodded solemnly. "Mind link. Family bond." "It's more than telepathy," Nira explained. "From what I've gathered, they've created a permanent connection with you, and surprisingly with me as well. I can sense their emotions now, sometimes even their thoughts." "Is that why Vexnar wanted them?" Jason asked. Not just for finding minerals. Partly, their abilities would be invaluable to anyone seeking power. But there's something else. Nira hesitated. Stephen received word yesterday. There's a bounty on all our heads now, especially the girls. Jason's protective instincts flared. Let them try. That's not all, Mashana and Nira continued. The Colony Council met this morning. Word of what happened on Rixa has spread. Apparently, we've become something of a symbol. A symbol? Of resistance against exploitation. Several other mining colonies are experiencing uprisings. Workers are demanding better conditions, citing the human who values children over profit as their inspiration. Nira's expression was a mixture of amusement and admiration. You've accidentally started a movement, Jason Mercer. Before he could respond, a knock at the door announced Stephen Clark, a stocky, cheerful man with laugh lines around his eyes despite being roughly Jason's age. The prodigal adventurer awakens, Stephen exclaimed. Good timing. The colony's throwing a little welcome party tonight. Seems you've become quite the celebrity. I'm not sure that's wise, Jason began, but Stephen waved away his concern. Haven takes care of its own, he said firmly. And you, my friend, are now one of us. The council voted unanimously to offer you and your unusual family permanent residence and protection. Jason looked at Nira, silently asking the question that had been forming since he regained consciousness. She answered with a slight nod and a smile that made his heart race. That evening, supported by Nira on one side and using a makeshift cane on the other, Jason attended the gathering in Haven's Central Plaza. The colony was smaller than he remembered, just a few hundred structures built around a natural spring, but it had grown more diverse. Humans mingled with a dozen alien species, all coexisting in the frontier spirit of mutual support. The girls were the stars of the celebration, their natural charm and newfound confidence winning over even the most reserved colonists. They darted through the crowd in new clothes, their white hair clean and braided with colorful ribbons, looking nothing like the street urchins who had ambushed him in Rix's abandoned district. They're adapting well, Nira observed, her hand comfortably entwined with Jason's. Kids are resilient, he replied, especially when they feel safe. As the evening progressed, Stephen pulled Jason aside for a private word. I've secured a property on the colony's eastern edge. 5 acres, a decent house that needs some work, good soil for growing. It's yours if you want it. Jason stared at his old friend in surprise. Stephen, I can't accept considerate payment for all those times you saved my hide in the Outer Rim, Stephen interrupted. Besides, those girls need stability, and you... He glanced meaningfully at Nira, who was laughing with some colonists across the plaza. You look like a man who's found something worth staying for. Later, as twin moons rose over Haven's peaceful landscape, Jason stood on the porch of what would become their home. Nira joined him, slipping her arm around his waist as they watched the girls chase firefly-like insects in the yard. Having second thoughts? She asked. This is quite a change from gallivanting across the galaxy. Jason pulled her closer, not even for a second, though I never imagined a simple trip to Rixa would end with 5 daughters, and he hesitated. And, Nira prompted, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. And the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, he finished, turning to face her fully. Stay with us, Nira, not just because of Vexnar or the bounty, but because we want you here. I want you here. Her answer came not in words, but in the way she pressed against him, her lips finding his with newfound certainty. In that moment, under alien stars on a frontier world, Jason understood that his greatest adventure was just beginning. From the yard came the sound of children's laughter. 5 little girls who had pulled a dangerous prank on a human man, never expecting it would lead to the family they'd always dreamed of. And as Jason held Nira in his arms, surrounded by the new life they were building together, he silently thanked whatever cosmic coincidence had led him to that abandoned district on Rixa, where 5 small hands had changed his destiny forever.